So let's talk about Jamie Michael. People may know Jamie Michael from our film, Think Before You Post. He's one of the speech criminals who was, he was charged with inciting racial hatred. He was held on remand for 17 days. A jury acquitted him after 17 minutes. But Tom, the ordeal hasn't ended there, because his local safeguarding board, despite his acquittal, have said that he's basically unsafe to be able to work with children, and he can't coach his daughter's football team.
This is a sort of example of how the punishment never stops for people, since that kind of scarlet letter of racism is applied to him, because he has been completely acquitted. People can watch the film and see just how obvious it was that his comment should never landed him in a courtroom in the first place. And yet this is something that incidentally he was telling us about at the time that we were filming the documentary, but the case has only now really come to the surface because it's now something that they're fundraising for and promoting. But it's just a real reminder that the law is not the only issue where freedom of speech, or at least the criminal law is not the only issue where freedom of speech is concerned. So as you say, he was told by his local safeguarding panel that he was unfit to coach his daughter's football team. That has continued despite the fact that he was acquitted by a jury of his peers. What more vindication could you possibly receive other than that? And as is often the case, the Free Speech Union are doing great work to try and face this down. They've also found at least a dozen more cases in which safeguarding rules brought in, particularly in the wake of the Sower murders back in the early 2000s, are being abused and used to punish thought crime and speech crime, effectively. There's another case that's been reported in the Telegraph this week of a teacher who ended up being sacked, suspended, banned from working with children because of some off-the-cuff comments he made about Britain being a Christian country and admonishing some Muslim students for, I think, washing their feet in the sinks of the boys' lavatory. The sort of thing that could have been very easily kind of smoothed out, but suddenly actually becomes you're a threat to children. It actually produced a hate crime investigation and even some sort of child safeguarding investigation on the part of the police. Such was the hysteria that surrounded this particular case. So it just never stops. It doesn't matter if it was a complete miscarriage of justice, as it was in Jamie Michael's case, the fact that he was held on remand, had his life completely thrown into the air, even that controversial, that it's not purely going to be when the police turn up that you're going to feel that chilling effect, that demonisation, that ostracisation, purely for expressing perfectly legitimate views.
Well, it's just watching his interview with Tom and on Think Before You Post, it really brings home how, I don't want to use the word traumatic, but, how big a deal it is to have have the police turn up, talk to your girlfriend, and then follow you to your work. And then with the footage of when he's being arrested, and they're just kind of making stuff up about, we're arresting you on the basis of this. And he says, well, what racist language?
They said indecent racial hatred, which is not a criminal offence. Which is,
and then he gets to the police. I mean, people should watch the video.
Unless he said it with his trousers around his ankles. I don't understand how that would have actually worked.
He gets to the police station. They can't load the video because, the Wi-Fi isn't working or something. And this is just absurd. It's like Kafkaesque. It's absurd. And yet, as Luke Gittos, who's in the film, details, he's held there for 17 days. That is insane. Held 17 days, misses his daughter's birthday. All of these things which really screw up your life. Yeah. I mean, I've never been arrested. I don't ever want to be because it's a big deal. And all of this from the basis of a video which, we at Spiked have defended many people who have said... pretty nasty.
Much worse. Genuinely horrible
things. Because we believe in free speech. Jamie Michael didn't say anything that bad. He actually went out of his way to say it was quite a political little speech about going to politicians and all the rest of it. And then you find out that the person who complained is not just some busybody on social media, but again, it's a politically motivated push from somebody working with politicians, and it's part of this, there was part of this wider sort of push from the political elite to be seen like they were doing something in the wake of the Southport riots by criminalising basically just anyone they could find. Yeah. And I think it's such an important story to show how censorship is used by a political elite to try and not just control the discussion about whatever's happening, but also to frighten people, because it's a really frightening thing that's happened to him. and that has happened to other people, because you would definitely think twice before saying anything else after that had happened. Your career ruined, your family life disrupted. This is genuine sort of, it's like state oppression. It's at a level which I don't think people realize how serious it is. And I just think hats off to Jamie, because he was given the option to say that he was guilty. It would have reduced his sentence, the rest of it. And he's, stuck by his guns and said, no, we need more people like him.
And it does feel as if speech crimes are not only, we know the police pursue them particularly zealously, but it's as if the authorities take them much more seriously than real crimes. Because you can imagine someone who's committed, a fairly serious offence like a burglary or something, maybe they've done their time. The normal liberal response to say, well, let's rehabilitate this person, let's bring them back into society. Why shouldn't, it's great they want to coach a football team, amazing, let's help them out. Whereas Jamie Michael, who is totally innocent, is not allowed to do normal things because his transgression was a speech crime. It was a political transgression.
No, exactly. And it is worth stressing, because a part of the way in which the punishment continues is the way in which a name continues to be dragged through the mud. I was talking about this case on LBC earlier this week, and then the caller directly after me, some sort of safeguarding consultant, openly said that in his video he had referred to people of colour as scumbags and psychopaths. Completely untrue. The various people calling up afterwards being like, well, what if a young, ethnic minority girl joined that football team? How would they feel? He wasn't talking about race in any way, shape or form. I mean, Luke puts it very well in the film, is that the only way that you could possibly sustain the reading of what he said in that video as racial hatred would be if you completely tortured it, took things out of context, took the worst possible reading of every single thing that he said. And particularly because the crackdown on speech after Southport was very much prefaced as part and parcel of the crackdown on the violence. There was this sense in which Keir Starmer explicitly went on the airwaves and said, people who are perpetrating this violence, whether on the streets or ginning it up online, will meet the full force of the law. In that video, he explicitly says this is not about violence. This is about doing things in the right way, about having meetings with politicians, as Ella was saying there. And the substance of what he's saying, he said by his own admission, things were a little bit clumsily expressed here or there. He was very angry. He also, repeated the claim, since proven to be false, that Axel Rueda-Cabana, the Southport killer, wasn't born in Cardiff. That's something that he's accepted. And of course, there was a lot of misinformation swirling at the time. But the substance of what he's saying has been vindicated by events, that if you have illegal migration, then there are going to be people allowed into the country who will do harm. It's not all of them, but it's going to be enough of them to cause a real problem. And it's ever since that horrific summer, both in terms of the first and foremost, the stabbings themselves, but also the unrest which, consumed many towns and cities afterwards. It's shown that many of the points he was making in that video have been vindicated. You do not stick up for free speech for people on the basis of whether or not you think they've got a point. But in this case, he did. Yeah. And yet he's being punished for having expressed it.